Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Call It Both Ways. We are still around. We didn't forget about you guys. It's just been a long year. We kind of thought once basketball season last season ended, we'd have some time to rest and relax and then get right back to it when this basketball season started, and that did not happen.
No.
So, Austin, how have you been? How's the first half of the season gone for you?
Pretty good. Obviously, probably the same as you. Everybody else out there busy. Seems like that shortage every year. We still hear about it. We still hear about how many games there are and how they're having difficulties. I mean, you get the emails just like me. Hey, we need somebody to go here. We need somebody to go there. And so it just kind of seems that no days off, honestly. And
Yes. I think we
kind of like,
talked about it in one of our very first episodes. It is very difficult to balance that. I guess you call it work life and family life at home because we're getting those emails and texts so often. With a need, sometimes games get canceled if we don't say yes, but at times, we just have to say no because we need to put our families first.
yeah. I will say though, on a good note, our local association this year, I think there was 20, 20 plus new officials that came to the meeting. So that's kind of been good in a sense. We've had new people out there taking care of some games and getting better. I think I've seen a couple people get some opportunities in some varsity games, which is even better because we need those officials. I know some of our buddies that we hang around have been talking about, in a few years they won't be doing it anymore. So we definitely need new people.
It's scary at times. I know we've talked about kind of having veterans that we got some of those same opportunities early on and having veterans with us to take care of something that goes awry. Um, it's still kind of scary to see some of these first and second year guys being thrown into varsity games. And some I've seen, we've mentioned some names here locally that I've watched games of recently that are doing great for first, second, third year officials. But it's where we're at. I get a lot of texts from whether it be fans, friends, family, whoever it is. Oh my gosh, these officials were just absolutely terrible. Well, we've been telling you for 10 or 15 years that, first of all, like, what you think is terrible probably isn't as bad as what you think. And then second of all, quality's not going to get better. The worse the environment is and the more officials we lose, that experience means a lot. And it's noticeable. Like we said, you can put two experienced officials with a newer one and things can usually go well. But I saw one game recently with three pretty newer officials in a high school game just because it was necessary. There were multiple tournaments going on around Fort Smith. A lot of other teams that weren't in tournaments that had regular home games, and those games can get very, very ugly very quickly. So all that to be said, be nice to the referees. We're
That's
just
right.
there to do a job. We're good people, most of us. We make mistakes. We're going to see one here in a little bit on a clip that in a pretty big game that you could call a mistake that I made. They happen to the best of officials. Um, Austin, you got anything else to follow that up with before we get going?
No, I just think, like you said, we've got newer people going on those games. But I've actually had a couple people texting me this year asking me for insight, asking me about rules and how they can get better. What are some tips and tricks? And obviously we can go into that later episodes, but know your standard, going to watch people work, going to, just get in that rule book, working on things in the mirror. And then, people have actually been texting me their own plays, which I think is great. Kind of what you're talking about sharing plays. And more, like you said, we'll dive into that here in just a little bit. And that was a fun game we got to work, but
That was a blast. So Austin and I got to work a local tournament called the Code Classic. Growing up, that was a pretty big tournament, a lot of big schools in it. We both got to work the final together last week, which was very, very fun. Two really good teams, and it turned out to be a great game.
yeah, great game. And it'll be fun to take a look at some clips from there. And, maybe here in a couple weeks, couple episodes, we can just break down some film. It might be a good game to just sit down and share the game and go through it, maybe as an episode. Might
I
be
like it.
something.
So we're going to get into some of the things that actually kind of have to do with that game, whether it be we're going to go over a little bit of pregame conferences with your own crews, kind of what we talk about with coaches and captains before a game. We're also going to get into the points of emphasis for this year, which are delay a game, everybody's favorite faking being fouled, or AKA flop, and then a new procedure for blood on jerseys. Then we're going to let you know about some of the things we've got coming up in further future episodes as well. But before we move on, let's talk about our favorite sponsor, our friend Blake Smith at Sports Officiating Supplies. From Pee-wees to pros, Sports Officiating Supplies is your source for all things referee. They offer uniforms for 16 different state associations as well as college apparel. They are a certified Smitty dealer. They offer a wide selection of uniforms for 8 different sports at a competitive price with personalized customer service. Owned and operated by active officials, we want you to make your first great call. Visit them online at sportsofficiatingsupplies.com.
Yeah. And I got something for you on that, Kyle. I got something for you.
What you got?
It's great. Great. And we love our guy. We love our guy, Blake. He's a great guy. Great deals.
So that's for Blake, right?
Yeah, that was for cool. Blake. That wasn't for your ad. That was definitely for him because he's an awesome dude. He'll get you on the hookup if he's got the stuff, and he'll do what he can to get it too if he doesn't have it. So
he got the money, he's got the goods.
That's right. That's right. Go ahead, hit him up. But let's kind of dive into some of these points of emphasis this year. We've got delay of game, faking being fouled, some procedures for blood. Those are just kind of some of the big ones that that are in the book. And I can actually, if you want, might be able to share my screen here and just get those pulled up.
So warning is nothing new, just something they wanted to emphasize, obviously, this year. I think in my own experience, and Austin, you can speak on your own, the more consistent you are with these and using them, the smoother your games usually go. A delay can be anything from a player tapping the ball after a made basket to where the new offense can't get it in inbound. It could be teams coming out slowly or late from timeouts. You've also got, I think there's something that's mentioned about on free throws, if somebody were to block out and hold a free throw shooter and keep us from continuing on shooting free throws, that's also considered a delay. And then plane violations on a throw-in, if you reach over past that invisible plane line, that's also a delay. So I think if you're consistent with these, sometimes I know for myself it's easy to be like, he barely tapped the ball and they didn't have to go that far to go grab it. If you let stuff like that go early and then you have one late that technically matters and a coach remembers that, those things matter. So the more consistent you are with even what seems like little things like delays, the better. If you hit them with a warning early on, they know hey, these guys are watching for this. Don't do this the rest of the game.
Yeah, and just kind of wanted to pull this up real quick. This is just a couple things about delay that shows in points of emphasis in the front of the high school book. Like you said, throw-in plane violations, huddle by either team that just kind of delays the administration of the free throw, interfering with the ball following a goal, failure to have the court ready following a timeout, or new in 2024, 2025 this year is just failure to immediately pass the ball to the near official. And any two of those delays just going to result in a team technical foul. They don't have to be issued for the same reason or even to the same player to get that team technical. So it's a big thing to issue that warning as soon as it happens. And that I'd say probably the biggest one that we see, and you can tell me if you think differently, but I'd say the biggest one we really see is just hitting the ball after it goes in. Do you agree? Or
yes, definitely. That, and I think one we're more patient on, and it's understandable. One we're more patient on is timeouts. Sometimes teams are so full timeouts, especially they're very slow to get out. Coach may still be drawing a play up or whatever the case may be. That's one I think we let go probably too often, and sometimes later in games, timeouts get even more extenuous.
Yep, I agree. And we actually, I'll have to see if I can find the clip later on this year, but we actually had a play we ended up having a technical foul actually on the failure to immediately pass the ball to an official because we'd already had a warning for delay for hitting the ball after it went through, and then later on in the game, player was frustrated about something. He just took the ball and threw it to the sideline. So, kind of an easy one, called itself. My partner had to take care of that, but yeah, there's not really much else to go on that. Just kind of wanted to really touch on that point of emphasis.
And one thing I think you did mention already, but just to emphasize, they That can be, we could have the very first play of the game. They tip it off. Somebody goes backdoor for a layup, and they tap it. We got a delay warning for that. Fast forward to the second half, fourth quarter, last minute, and somebody reaches over through on a throw-in and playing violation. Those two still part of the same rule, equal
Mhm.
that team technical even that far apart.
Yep. Yep. Now, just for anybody that might be listening and might not, understand what to do there, just as soon as the other team hits that ball after it goes through the basket, you're just immediately going to shut it down, hit your whistle, go in, make sure the table knows, make sure your partner knows that you've got a delay violation. Just a warning for delay, I should say, is a better way to put it. That way, everybody's aware. You don't want to just keep it in your head and you be the only one that knows. It's something that you want to make sure everybody's aware of what you've got. So make sure you're vocal, use your whistle, use your voice, and just make sure they're aware.
That's one I'm not trying to like make a show of or anything, but I want everybody to know why I'm hitting my whistle, and that way we don't forget this. Like I said, 2 or 3 quarters later, oh, gosh, I do remember him giving us that warning in the first or second quarter.
And I'd say if you're pretty serious about it, make sure use your voice, use your whistle. I would say 99% of the time, coaches are really good about taking care of that.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the hitting the ball after the goal.
Leave it alone.
Yep, leave it alone. So definitely good. So let's move
I
on to
even
this next.
one last thing to that. It's not something that's necessary, but one just layer to things like that kind of gives you credibility. I like to go as far as to tell what player it is. I got a delay on White 34. That way, coach knows. Oh gosh, there was no question. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm right there with you. Now this next one, point of emphasis, but uh, I feel like we take care of this pretty well in regards to the blood. Just kids having blood on them. If you see somebody bleeding or if you see some blood on a uniform, you really want to shut it down as soon as it happens because it's a big risk. It's player safety. You can have some issues happen with blood, and we don't want anybody to get any bloodborne illnesses or anything like that. So,
I don't want
uh,
blood on me either.
yeah, I don't think anybody really wants that. Um, but as soon as you see it happen, or if you see blood, you're just going to want to shut it down. Take the kid over to the coach, or let the coach know about it. They've got 20 seconds to get that blood situation fixed, whether that be changing the jersey. They can change the jersey and change it in the book if they can't get that blood cleared off, or they can just get it wiped off, get it bandaged up, whatever the thing. If they can't get it fixed in that 20 seconds, it's at that point that they're going to have to take a timeout if they want that player to stay in the game. Otherwise, they can just put a sub out there.
Now, a question on that same topic. Let's say it takes more than 20 seconds. Can a coach right at 20 seconds or even just after call a timeout and buy that player back in if their blood is taken care of during that timeout?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I'm following you 100%, but if they take a timeout, that player's going to be allowed to stay in the game. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, exactly
Yeah.
what I'm asking.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah. If they take a timeout right there, that kid can stay in the game.
So that happened in a state tournament game in Oklahoma when I was younger. And the official did not allow the player back in. It's one thing if you also officiate football, players have to sit out a play. There's no buying them out in timeouts. And I know at times, especially early on in my officiating career, I got those two confused a lot. I would tell football coaches at times, like, yeah, you can call a timeout and buy them back in, and vice versa in basketball. No, you can't. Well, that happened in a very important game, and a very important player wasn't allowed to come back in.
Well, it's unfortunate, but
Yep.
bygones be bygones.
Yes, sir. All right, and the third and final point of emphasis, we all have heard it, we've seen it, and started, it seems like, in the NBA and worked its way down. Flopping or faking being fouled, as the rulebook calls it.
Yeah, and this is a fun one because I think over years past the penalty was really severe. It was immediately a technical foul if you were to call it. Um, I think a lot of times officials just erred on the side of any legal defender in those situations versus flopping or faking. but the rule's been in there for a long time. It's just that the NFHS has finally adopted uh, the way that the college rule, in a way, has faking being fouled, and so now it's a warning to start off. So if somebody flops is the best way to put it, um, faking being fouled, the actual definition, then you can signal a flop, which is just your hands from your chest and then just down to the ground. Uh, this is for really the big plays that you're going to see this on are block charge plays where there's absolutely no contact or there's incidental contact and the player throws themselves back. Another one that's kind of a bigger one that we see often is a 3-point shooter who has absolutely no contact and then falls to the ground. The head bob is one that the committee talked to us about before the season start, just throwing your head back like you got hit. But really, any tactic that is creates an opinion of being fouled. So, Kyle, if you want, I can go ahead and get that play pulled up.
Yeah, go ahead, and while you're at it, one question for you while you're doing it. Can we have a faking being foul warning or the actual technical, either way, if there is contact?
Yeah, I mean, even if there's contact, incidental contact, we could still have a faking being fouled.
Yeah, so the actual rulebook definition says faking being fouled or flopping occurs when a player simulates being fouled or makes theatrical or exaggerated movements when there is no illegal contact by committing acts such as, but not limited to, overtly embellishing, kind of like Austin was saying, maybe like throwing your head back, using a head bob. Like I said, it was the next one. And then using any other tactics in order to create an opinion of being fouled and therefore gaining an advantage.
That's right. That's right. I'm going to actually stop sharing for just a second.
So we've got a perfect play from that game we mentioned earlier. And of course, it happened to yours truly, who was also the crew chief on the game. But the first one, to be honest, and you guys let us know in the comments on your opinion. The first one, there was contact. The second one, I think I absolutely missed and should have called faking being fouled warning.
Let me get it pulled up right here. I'm still looking for it.
So like Austin mentioned on this first play, I believe it'll be the first one we show. There can be contact and still have a faking being foul call. On this first one, you'll see I called a offensive foul, a player control foul. And obviously had to have a conversation with the coach that it went against because that's the first thing he said, and we've heard it a lot. With it being a new rule, it's on everybody's minds, including coaches, and that was the first thing he asked. Is that not a flop? His first question was there contact? I told him, Coach, there can be contact and be a flop, but to me this was illegal contact. The second one, I don't think there was any kind of illegal contact. So
let me get this pulled up here. Try and make it a little bit bigger on my end. And all right, you ready for me to go ahead and play this?
Absolutely. So we got
So
an inbound on the baseline after a foul, and you'll see it on the low left side block right in front of me. It's the action between white 5 and red 33. So it's really tough to tell from this angle. I've got a great angle looking between them and could see the ball handler dribbler put his right shoulder directly into the chest of number 5. Did number 5 embellish the contact? I think so. Was the contact illegal? 100% in my mind.
I'm just trying to slow it down there for you.
It's tough with that because all you see is from this angle is number 5's back. But
yeah, and me on the floor, I thought he went through him through the path of him. So that's such a tough play. It's definitely something to be aware of.
Yeah, and you can even that's one thing. First thing I had a chance to, I went and asked both my partners. Austin's got the look you can see across the floor, kind of like the angle we're looking at. It looks 100% like an offensive foul. I asked our other partner in Trail, and again, this isn't to say anything about him. When we ask each other questions, because we want an honest opinion. And his first reaction was, I think he may have either flopped or at the very least embellished that. Cool, I can live with that. I think my look was really good, and that the contact was what put him on the floor. This is one of those that could possibly go either way, depending on the angle that you had.
Yep, I agree. You want me to go ahead and play the other one?
Absolutely. Now, this next one, I don't think this goes either way. I'll just be completely honest. I'm not super comfortable with the high school adjudication of this rule. In college women's, it's extremely simple. You give the signal live when you see the faking happening, and we go report the warning the next dead ball. Very simple. High school, there's a couple different scenarios depending on whether it's the offense or defense and whether who gets the rebound immediately, right, Austin? Um, that that determines when we shut everything down. College, very simple. Next dead ball, shut it down. Go tell the table and the coaches the next one after the warning. Same exact thing. We're going to kill it immediately. It's a team technical.
Yep, and we can kind of dive into the casebook plays because I've got them on my computer here, so
Perfect.
we can pull the casebook
I may
plays up.
learn a thing or two about this tonight.
We'll have fun with it. That's all that matters.
So this actually happens between the exact same two players. They had kind of been going at it all game, and this is only in the second quarter, but sort of the same thing. I've watched this play probably 50 times myself, probably a good 20 of those the night of the game. The question is, number one, is it illegal contact? If you watch number 5, right before number 33 goes to the ground, I think he goes a little forward and creates some contact, which I could have and probably should have called an offensive foul. The other question was it if the contact isn't illegal, should that be a flop on number 33 red? And then we'll get to the end of the video in a second. There's a whole other layer to it.
Yeah, there's a whole other layer to that.
So what do you think? Was this embellishment on 33 red's part? Was it illegal contact on number 5 in white? What do you think, Austin?
My personal opinion is that, for one, this kid's a good ball player. Really solid play.
I didn't see the stat line, but I know they were the two leading scorers for their teams.
Yeah, and I would say that that basketball IQ, his mentality, I think he was definitely trying to draw some contact. He immediately is looking to you.
Oh, he looked right at me when he went to the floor too.
He goes to the floor. I think he definitely sold it. Let's see, I just want to slow it down here and go kind of in slow motion. Kind of see him just standing there. The biggest thing for me, and this is kind of from soccer, where I've seen it the most, is when you see the hands go up, the flail up like that. To me, that's a
embellishment.
Yeah, I'm doing it on purpose. Now, yeah. I'm not going to say that that's every time, because sometimes we get hit and our bodies, fly that way. But to me, that's I got hit type of thing, or I'm pretending like I got hit harder than I really did. And then you go down and he's already, catching himself because he doesn't want to actually hit the floor hard, because he's, his body's telling him what he's going to do.
Right.
I think a lot of the times if you get hit like that, you're just flying backwards and you hit however you hit.
And luckily, speaking kind of the point of consistency, we always say as a crew, we want to be consistent. This is one of those. Thankfully, it's back-to-back plays on possessions right next to each other. But sometimes these plays, like that first one I had, that'll happen in the first quarter. You got another one happen in the third or fourth. We're constantly processing plays like this and cataloging. In my mind right here, I've already seen that matchup, that previous possession down on this end of the floor. I'm expecting something, especially they've kind of, like we said, been going at it all game. Then we get the offensive foul that I called. I'm expecting something here. I think in retrospect, I kind of wish I had called a flop, but in my mind, after the offensive foul I had just called on him, it kind of felt like that might be adding insult to injury. Not that that necessarily matters when it comes to making a decision, but for me this time it kind of did. There was some contact. That's why I just let it slide.
Yeah, and if you're watching the defender here in white, does he actually chuck him that far out? Is he actually pushing him with that much strength? To me, slowing it down, I don't think so. I think the kid's just got a good basketball IQ. He's trying to get a foul, trying to get an extra one, I should say. I think it's a good, just play on. But yeah, definitely, like you're saying, this could be a flop. This could definitely be a play that we could take a flop on. But just game management wise, based on the other play, based on what we'd had happen in the game already. I think it's a good just play on.
And now to piggyback off of that, and thankfully we had some prior knowledge going into this game. These two teams, that this is a championship of a tournament. They had already met previously in the season, and I think it was one of the two teams only lost possibly to the other team for the season so far. So we knew that they knew each other, probably didn't love each other, and then also had been kind of warned by other people that had watched both of these teams that those two players specifically were going to be quite the matchup. So while we're cataloging those things throughout a game, and also remembering that we just had that play 2 possessions ago, those kind of matchups are the ones, no matter where you're at on the floor, you kind of got to know where those people are. And especially if they're in your primary, you got to know what's going on with those two. And you'll see exactly why here in just a second.
Yeah, and I'll just say, just kind of to piggyback on that, that's one of those things that you really need to figure out in the first few possessions of the game. You want to figure out who your good players are, who your knuckleheads are. You want to categorize that in the back of your head at the beginning of the game, just from a game management perspective. We want to know who we can go to. We need to have communication with someone, whether that be a captain. If somebody wants to communicate with us in an effective manner, we need to be able to do that. If we need to diffuse a situation or know when to intervene, all those things are just good game management tactics to just categorize and keep in the back of your head. But I'm going to go ahead and run this whole playthrough so we can just watch.
Keep an eye
everything.
on our important matchup, number 33 in red and 5 white.
Man, I was kind of slow it down
So
here.
it's pretty quick. Yeah, it happens pretty quick. In my mind, like playing it back, it seemed like so slow, like he stood over him and flexed on him. But um, all this was simple taunting technical. Again, you got to know where these guys are on the floor. Keep an eye on them before, during, and after plays. Thankfully, in one like this, there's a lot of times if you watch enough basketball, um, lesser experienced officials than Austin might already be a half court or even further down the floor. But we know what we've got. We've got basically 10 players still up in the front court now, the back court. And Austin thankfully hung around and saw exactly what I saw. So if I had had a brain fart and been looking somewhere else I shouldn't have been, thankfully Austin had my back and we didn't miss something important like this. That just goes to show you it's very important to be locked in at all times. Know where everybody's at. Kind of know that matchup now is in Austin's lap on the outside of the lane line. Thankfully he stuck around and it's pretty cool. I watched this a few times and Austin even mentioned it. We almost give the technical foul signal in sync.
Yeah, we almost. It's just a little off. But one thing I want to just kind of talk about too. Sorry, I'm clearing my throat here. Is right there. So right after red scores, the big thing for me on this play is if you score and you just immediately go up the floor and you're flexing and you're screaming and you're excited, that's one thing. But he immediately turns his head, and it's going to be kind of hard to see, just a little blurry and stuff. But he headhunts.
Oh, he looked him right in the eyes.
Yeah, and I forget exactly what he said, and regardless, I wouldn't just be quoting it here.
Yeah.
But you can just see the head turn right there and the immediate say of something. And, that's got to be addressed. That's just something that can end up escalating later down the line. That's something that if you don't take care of that, then White 5 might go down there and end up doing something that, he really shouldn't do just because emotions are high and he just got taunted on. So that's a play that we definitely have to address. That's not something that we can just let go of. And something else I want to talk about real quick. I'm just going to run it through real quick. So right here, you can't see much because obviously we're looking at a far angle.
We had a whole conversation right there.
Yeah, we did. And that's the good thing. Kyle and I have some good chemistry. We've worked a lot of games together. We're thankful for that. And we just kind of know how each other works. But maybe you're working with somebody you've never worked with before. In that situation, it's going to be good to just slow your partner down, talk to them for a second, And I can just actually tell you what this conversation was. I looked at Kyle and I said, I know exactly what you got. We don't need to talk about anything. I got your ball. And Kyle, there's no need for us to stop and say, oh, I've got a technical foul for taunting. We both had the technical foul. We both knew what each other had. There was no question. And that just comes with games together, things like that. But if I do just want to make a point that if you're working with somebody that you've never worked with before, or maybe you're not comfortable with, or whatever the case may be, and let's just say you didn't have the technical foul, but you were close to it, you want to stop them and just say, hey, what do you got? Let's talk about it for a second before we go report this. Just slow them down for a second, make sure they know what they're going to report, who's shooting free throws, everything like that. Obviously it's a little different for us in this case because we worked so many games together. We just know. We knew exactly what the penalty was. We knew who was going to be shooting because we both had the same thing. He was just the one reporting it and taking it to the table. So, anything you want to add on that, Kyle?
The only other thing I noticed is just kind of afterwards making sure we don't take off, or we still got eyes on everybody because of what you said. If the player who just got flexed on and taunted at wants to retaliate, it looks really bad if we miss that on the back end if both of our backs are turned or looking the other way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think you did a great job right there, sticking where you're at. You can still see the kid behind me with the ball, and you're right by number 5 and between him and the other 2 red players.
Yep. And then he holds it.
We've heard this is one of my favorite things you hear from, I believe it's Paul Diaspera that does Crown Refs podcast. Technical foul is just another foul. Yes, sometimes there's some bad things that go on. There's ejections and stuff that happen, but something like this, I'll say 33 came up to me one of the next couple possessions and apologized. I was like, 33, you don't have to, I appreciate it, but you don't have to say sorry to me. Just let it go. Let's move on. And he even came up to me later in the game and was like, I felt like an idiot. I did that, and then I tripped right over his foot and fell.
Yeah,
So, man,
and
just move on.
That was also the coach immediately had a conversation with him.
If the clip went far enough, yes, he goes straight to the coach, and he's like, you got to keep your head on straight here. That was pretty obvious.
Yep. I agree. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that. We've seen enough there in regards to plays.
Right. And our next segment, we're going to move on to, we're going to talk a little bit about pregame. And that is, there's a lot of things that go into pregame. It's not just our conversations while we're getting dressed. This extends out to pregame on the floor, how we address coaches and captains as well. And then sometimes there's even a second kind of pregame follow-up. I know at least in Arkansas, we go back in the dressing room. Sometimes in college as well before we come back out for starting lineups and everything. So Austin, you wanna kind of talk about how we do things on our own, and then get into the very organized pregame that you have. That a lot of people I've seen this. If you've officiated long enough, I'm sure somebody's brought one of these sheets with them, and I should probably have one with me. I've just gotten so used to kind of giving the same pregame when I'm a crew chief. But these are great reminders. It's never a bad thing to go over the same thing, even if you're working 2, 3, 4 nights a week. Like Austin said, you're not always working with somebody that you're as comfortable with. That's even more important to have a really good pregame, so the crew itself is consistent. We have credibility, and that we communicate well, whether it be with each other, coaches, or players.
And that's the big thing I would say about pregames, besides the specifics, is that a lot of the times, at least I remember when I was younger, especially when I was really young, this is my, 11th season, 12th season now. So as young as we both are, we've both been doing it for a while. But I can remember the first few years, especially you start getting varsity and you're still really young. A lot of people don't want to pregame. A lot of people don't want to talk about things. They don't want to go in depth on anything. And it's just really good to interject yourself, even if there's nothing that anybody wants to talk about. And what I mean by that is just to talk about plays that may have happened to you over the year, maybe early on in the season, any intricate situations. The faking being fouled is a great topic for this year, just because, it's new in the sense that how we're going to officiate it. There's a warning first, and then there's a technical foul versus immediately going to a technical. But just find a way to create some conversation if there's no conversation happening. A lot of people won't think that they need a pregame. We've worked together so many times. We've done this, we've done that. You still want to talk about things before the game. you're never too good to have a pregame. So that's the big thing that I would say is just always talk about something, whether it be that crazy play, that situation. And you can always just have an icebreaker to get yourself into that conversation. I know some people aren't really extroverted. They just want to kind of stay in their shell and not say anything. But in this business, we really need to be able to communicate effectively. We really need to be able to have open conversations about whatever the case may be. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I would say about pre-games. I'm like, hey, we got any plays you want to talk about? Anything crazy happened to you this year? That's probably one of the first things that I say a lot of the times I'm in the dressing room. Other than, how you been? How's your family? How's life been treating you? Things like that. Obviously, you want to have just regular conversations. But at the end of the day, too, you also want to talk about those plays, just talk about the situations.
And there's times we talk about our tool belt, cataloging those conversations that somebody, whether they got it right or wrong, either way, somebody told you about something crazy that happened in their game. I can remember seeing things like that in my own games and reverting back to what I was told and remembering, when that happened, I went and looked it up. Now I know that procedure and how to do it in my own games. So a lot of times those things can help you. It may not be that night. It may come in handy in the future in a game that you have.
I agree. And I'll go ahead and share my screen too. This is actually from I want to say I got this from the NFHS basketball officials page. Just kind of a pregame card, if you would say. And you see, it just kind of goes over everything, the rules and mechanics, pregame responsibilities, use your time on the court wisely before the game. One that you never really want to bring up, but is kind of just good to have in your back pocket is the fighting. What are you going to do if a fight breaks out? It's good to just bring up those things. Handling your primary. It's okay to have double whistles. There's just so many different variables. If anybody needs this too, if anybody watches this and sees this and wants to have this, like I said, I got it on one of the Facebook groups, so I'm happy to share it with you as well. You can just drop a note, leave a comment, whatever the case may be, and I'll get that out to you. But it's also, if you're not a member of that Facebook page, it's a really good group to be on. There's always plays being shared. There's always something to see. And it's similar to that, I'd also shout out Paul with Crown Refs because he does a really great job. There's a really great community over there of people that have, plays to share, seen a thing or more than I have. So there's a lot of great communities, a lot of great places you can go just to get this information. So if you're trying to
you'll see a lot of different variations of this same thing too that will have some of the same things, some different. I think my pregame depends a lot on who I'm working with, how experienced they are, how often I've worked with them, and then also what level I'm working. So if my pregame with, what was it? I think the week before Thanksgiving break, I had a third or fourth year official, something like that, and a second or third year official with me for varsity games. So we had a lot different pregame than I'm going to have with the two guys I was with in those clips we watched from that championship game. Based off experience, we're going to talk about a lot more detailed stuff with those newer officials than I am with Austin and another experienced official, whether it be we may go into specifics about consistency, what we know about each team. I may even bring out some rulebook terminology like rhythm, balance, quickness, and rhythm, speed, balance, and quickness, things like that. When it comes to being consistent, we're going to talk about everything from how we communicate to one of my favorites that, especially whether they're newer officials or not, if I don't work with them a lot, I get in such a big hurry sometimes. That clip you saw, that's slow for me, and that's because I'm comfortable with the people I'm working with. There's times that, especially if I'm crew chief and I've got newer officials with me, I can get in such a hurry, and I love to remind them, hey, if I'm talking 1,000 miles an hour and just rambling on during a crazy situation, technical foul or whatever it may be, just put your hand up and say, slow down, take a breath. Because at the end of the day, they have to wait on us. Obviously, we don't want some crazy delay just for us sitting there having a conversation, but usually when we slow down is when we get things right. The quicker and more in a hurry we are, a lot of times we don't get things right.
That's very right. Yeah, that's slowing down is probably the biggest kicker. I think one of the first things one of my mentors said to me when I first got started is like, you're too quick. You're going way too fast. You're reporting fast. You're getting to the table too fast. You're doing everything too fast. Slow down. Game's not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. So just take your time. Make sure, everything's the way that you want it to be.
And the longer you've done it, no matter how quick the game is, the things just slow down for you. There's times like watching that clip of that technical foul. That seemed like so fast compared to what I remembered in my head live. Like it seemed like that was just super slow. We saw him like almost in slow motion taunting. And then you watch that and it's like, holy cow, that was 2 seconds. But things like, especially I'm going back to working with some newer officials, and sometimes this is a good reminder, like Austin said, even with people that are all veterans and you work a lot together, we all need these reminders. I already mentioned rhythm, speed, balance, quickness, and things like that. Freedom of movement's a very easy way to describe all of those. What are we going to call as far as hand checking, and what are we going to allow them to try to play through early on? Are we going to hit those early? Let them know we're watching, things like that. Those are all things that go into a pregame, and there's a lot of different variables that decide how we're going to work a game. Sometimes we don't have a clue about either team coming
Yep.
in. Sometimes we know them well. We've had them 20 times in the last 2 or 3 years. What are some other things that you like to go over in pregame, whether it be with experienced officials or newer ones?
Just the big thing. I mean, I say big things, little things, but communication, making eye contact, or giving a thumbs up, just the small things that make us look good. The slowing down, making sure we have 5 on each team before we put the ball in play, and jewelry. That's kind of been a kicker for me this year, just because I've seen so many different people coming out wearing jewelry and forgetting they have it in.
Boys and girls.
Yeah, just making sure everybody's legal, making sure that the game's ready to be played. But kind of like you said, there's depending on who you're with, depending on the teams, there's so many variables that are going to come into play on what you're actually going to talk about. The main thing is that you talk. That's probably the main thing. I mean, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter what you're talking about, but as long as you're having some good conversation, especially when it comes down to the game related, you're going to be in a better spot than if you would have just sat there and been quiet and just been on your phone the whole time and not paying attention and whatever the case may be. You just need to be talking about something.
Yep.
So
I go back to my teaching for, let's say, a classroom. If I don't lay out expectations early on, they don't know what to expect. They don't know what I expect of them. So whether it's either with each other as officials, to coaches, or to players, by having those pre-games, we are laying out our expectations. And when something arises later, there's no surprise. Oh, well, he literally talked about that in pregame with us, that this is something that they were going to be keeping an eye out specifically for. And there's no surprise here. We know he talked about it, as opposed to we don't go talk to him at all. We don't have a pregame with each other, with coaches or with players, and then something comes out of the blue, and they want to know what the heck.
Yep. Exactly. Well, I don't think we're got much else to really talk on today, but moving forward, I think we're definitely gonna be back for the year. So that was the kicker. Is life kind of happens, a lot going on personally, and just life in general. So now we're back at it. It's 2025 coming up, and we really want to just dig in and make sure everybody gets some information that might help you be a better official moving forward. We're going to try and bring on some newer officials, some veteran officials as well, some NCAA tournament people, and then just your newer high school people. Just kind of get an idea of what they're looking at, what might help them, what just information from all around. Because really, if you can get multiple perspectives, I think that'll just make you better overall.
I agree. I'm looking forward to some of the interviews we have. It's really cool. I'm a history teacher anyway, so I love hearing about other people's experiences. So getting to hear about whether it's a newer official that we're kind of looking back for where we're at in our officiating careers, and getting to hear their experiences, because things are different for them right now, way, way different. I probably wouldn't have made it. I'd have been one of the, what is it, at 50-something% that quit, or so no, 70-something% that quit in their first 2 years. I would have been part of that statistic for sure if things were as bad as they are now. So it's good to hear perspective from newer officials all the way up to people that are doing it at the highest level that you see on TV. It's cool to hear how things work for them. Sometimes you can pick things up that you can add into your own games in certain ways. There's ways that they communicate at higher levels that we can't do that with high school coaches. Most of them, anyways. But
Truth.
it's really cool to get insight. I think we can all get better, whether it's somebody that's lesser experienced than us or somebody that is working at the highest level.
That's right. That's right. And once again, we want to thank everybody. If you did take the time to watch all the way through, I know it's been about 45 minutes now, but really we just want to share, content that's going to make everybody better. If you think of anything at all you want to talk about, any plays you want to see, any specific type of plays, or just anything in general, we're happy to go over it in a later episode. Just drop a comment, send us a message, whatever the case may be, and we'll do our best to find a play that's happened in one of our games that we can go over. And if not one of ours, I'm sure we can probably find some NCAA games that have that play that we could talk about.
Yeah. And if you happen to be listening and you think, I think I would be a good interview because I've had some crazy experiences or whatever the case may be, let us know. You never know. You may be the next Call It Both Ways interview.
That's right. Once again, thanks everybody for joining us here on Call It Both Ways. We're definitely back, and we'll see you again next time.
See you in 2025.